Greetings, welcome back to the channel. Here are 20 facts you might not know about The Shining. Is horror a genre or a cheap thrill? Or can it be something more? Well, when Stanley Kubrick is at the helm of a movie, even a horror movie, it can rise to the level of being a critical darling. The Shining is considered one of the best horror films ever by many movie fans, but it's also just straight up considered a great movie by many, irrespective of the genre. Combine an iconic, taxing decor, one of the most successful writers ever, and the biggest movie stars of the generation, and you get The Shining. Here are 20 facts about Brooks' film. It was a quick turnaround of adaptation. Kubrick was not the only big name associated with The Shining. The movie is based on a book by none other than Stephen King. King's book came out in 1977 and the film came out in 1980, which means it was a pretty swift timeline for the adaptation. Kubrick was looking for a hit. How did Kubrick end up making The Shining? It all started with Barney Landon. Barney Landon was Kubrick's film that came out in 1975, and it had been a commercial flop. At this point, Kubrick decided he wanted to make a movie that could be a success at the box office, but still be flourishing from a creative perspective. The director went through a lot of books. Kubrick figured he should find a book he could adapt to create his hopefully successful film. King said that Kubrick was given a bunch of books to read to try and find one he wanted to tackle. The story goes that Kubrick's secretary got used to hearing the thud of a book being thrown after Kubrick tired of it. Eventually she noticed there wasn't a thud and went to find the director engrossed in The Shining. Kubrick wanted Nicholson from the beginning. It's hard to imagine anybody but Jack Nicholson playing Jack Torrance, the patriarch of the Torrance family, who drives the horror of the film. Kubrick felt the same way, apparently, as Nicholson was his first choice for the role. That being said, other actors were considered just to be on the safe side, including Robert De Niro, Harrison Ford, and Robin Williams. However, none of those actors got a sign-off from King. There was another writer in the mix. King wrote the book that became The Shining, obviously. On top of that, Kubrick was a writer on the screenplay. However, Kubrick isn't the only writer credited with the screenplay for the film. Diane Johnson also wrote on the script. While she did not do much in the world of film, she was an accomplished novelist, and her book Le Divorce was adapted into a movie in 1997. The Garby twins aren't twins in the book. One of the indelible, creepy images of The Shining is the Garby twins, the two ghost girls that young Danny Torrance runs into in the halls of the Overlook Hotel. In the book, though, they aren't twins. They are referred to as sisters and are mentioned as to being around 8 and 10. Then Kubrick cast identical twins for the role, and that changed everything. A lot of kids were considered for Danny. They didn't hire a known child actor to play Danny Torrance. Instead, Kubrick sent casting agencies to Cincinnati, Chicago, and Denver to audition over 5,000 kids to try and find Danny. Why those cities? Because Kubrick wanted to find a kid whose accent would fall somewhere between Nicholson and Shelley Duvall. A couple real hotels served as the base for the Overlook. When they say that New York City is a character in a movie, you might roll your eyes, but it is probably fair to say the Overlook Hotel is not unlikely a character in The Shining. They didn't film at a real hotel, though the establishment shots of the Overlook are actually the Timberline Hotel near Mount Hood in Oregon. Meanwhile, the interiors, which shot on a set, were inspired by the Hawaiian Hotel in Yosemite National Park. Kubrick used another filmmaker as an example for his cast, in order to try and give his cast and crew an idea of what kind of vibe he wanted for The Shining. Kubrick decided to screen David Leitch's cult classic Eraserhead from them, given that Kubrick went into the project saying that he wanted The Shining to be a commercial success. That seems like a rare choice. We also hope that Danny Lloyd, who played Danny Torrance, was not part of the screening. The script was a work in progress. Kubrick was known for his meticulousness as a director and for being demanding of his cast and crew. As such, he was not afraid to tinker with the movie as it went along. Kubrick was changing his shooting scripts all the time, sometimes multiple times a day. In fact, Nicholson got so frustrated he began tossing scripts changes away, knowing they would eventually be changed again. He ended up learning his lines right before saying them. Duvall had it even worse than Nicholson. Duvall, like Kubrick, was particular about her craft. This did not lead to a great working relationship, as the director and a man who was not afraid to throw his weight around. Kubrick had the upper hand in their battle. Duvall found the experience so stressful that she got sick while shooting, and her hair even began to fall out. The iconic line was improvised. If one line stands out in The Shining, it's probably Jack's intense, maniacal, "Here's Johnny." That line was actually improvised by Nicholson. It also almost did not make the cut, as the British Kubrick didn't understand the reference. Oh, and that was a real door that Nicholson chopped through, by the way. He had been a firefighter in his youth and knew his way around an axe. Different versions of the typewriter scene are used in international edits. It's not uncommon for international versions of a movie to have little tweaks in terms of language and culture. For example, the idiom "all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy" does not necessarily resonate in other languages and parts of the world, as such international versions of different lines there. In Germany, it's never put off until tomorrow what you can do today. In Spanish, it's no matter how early you get up, you can't make the sun rise any sooner, and so on. A new technology proved vital to filming. Had they tried to make The Shining a few years sooner, it might have looked different. That's because the movie made use of the Steadicam, something that film viewers are now used to. Back then, though, it had been used a half a dozen times or more at most. The Shining was one of the very first films to ever use the Steadicam. Kubrick got his commercial success. Was The Shining a blockbuster? No, but it was enough for a success to be a hit. Kubrick made the film for 19 million, and it was worldwide box office was 47 million. Sure, it didn't do as well as another 1980s film by the name of Empire Strikes Back, but it was able to turn a profit. It took a while for critics to warm up to The Shining. Kubrick didn't exactly make crowd pleasers a lot of the time, even when trying to make a commercial film. At first, the critics' reviews were mixed on The Shining. Now, though, the movie is considered an all-time classic. AFI ranked it 29th on their list of 100 Years, 100 Thrills, and it appeared on a couple more of those lists as well. Roger Ebert, who didn't love it when he reviewed it when it came out, put it on his list. The Great Movies series eventually as well. There is one notable critic of the movie, though, you know, who has never been shy about voicing their dislikes for The Shining. That would be none other than King. The author, despite Kubrick's adaptation of the novel, he doesn't like how Kubrick portrayed Jack and Wendy, and also, to be fair, the novel was personal to King. It was in many ways him working through his demons, alcoholism. So seeing the novel turned into a movie he didn't like was probably frustrating. Interestingly, he was a fan of the TV miniseries The Shining. There are a lot of interpretations about what movie really means. There is a documentary called Room 237 that is dedicated to chronicling some of the theories that abound about The Shining. A lot of people have a lot of ideas about what the movie is actually about. Perhaps the most famous of those is the theory that The Shining is Kubrick's way of admitting he staged the 1969 moon landing. The Shining has inspired many parodies. The Shining is one of the most parodied movie ever made. You can catch reference to the Gabby twins or Here's Johnny all over the place. That being said, if we are talking about parodies of the movie, we want to focus on The Simpsons in one of their Treehouse Horror episodes, they do a story called The Shining's that is a straight up parody of The Shining. It inspired its own icon moment when Homer goes crazy. There's a sequel to the movie. Many years after writing The Shining, King decided to write a sequel. In 2013, he released Dr. Sleep, which focused on a grown-up Danny Torrance. That book was then adapted into a movie as well. Now, given the fact Kubrick is no longer alive, and also given how King feels about the movie version of The Shining, it remains to be seen if Dr. Sleep would have anything to do with its cinematic presentations. However, director Mike Flanagan expectedly said he was making a sequel to The Shining film, and that movie came out in October 2019. And there you go, guys. 20 facts you might not know about The Shining. Thank you all very much for listening. And if you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing for more videos like this. And I'll see you around the broom somewhere. Love you all.